It was a frightening time.
What did you do? What did you do in the war?
I was a wireless operator. I learnt Morse code, and I used to transmit messages around the world. It was I remember I was in Belgium when I celebrated my 22nd birthday, and the guys celebrated. We had a tin mug full of rum, and we drank it, and the guy said, "Oh, Harry, you can say at least you passed 21 anyway."
What do you think about the way that the world is now? The way that the British government and British Army operate, like in places like Iraq, where we've had a war for oil and we've got a whole country on fire, and they still want to bomb Syria. They bombed Libya. They're still bombing Iraq, and we have refugees.
We should never have ever been in that war to begin with.
But we needed the oil.
Everybody needs oil, apparently, but is it worthwhile killing people and taking over a country to do it? I don't think so, personally. I mean, the leader in Canada at that time, when the Iraqi war was coming up front, he refused to fight, to have our men fight in Iraq. He was praised up and down Dale for it. I remember reading that George Bush, 10 years before the Iraqi war, he was discussing with oilmen about Iraq and seizing their oil.
We also got Tony Blair and the Labour Party.
Tony Blair's... I'm sorry, but I think he's an arsehole. I mean, it was not long ago, he was advocating boots on the ground in ISIS. Can you imagine getting our Englishmen into ISIS conflict?
But we're already been out there. You know, these are the same people that fled from the invasion. You know, obviously there's people join in, and I mean it's a mess. You got beheadings. It's gone.
Yeah.
And we still want to bomb, and we still want to. We're still an imperialistic country, aren't we? Through our corporations.
Yes, and it's all for profit for the few at the expense of the many. It's I despair sometimes, and other times I feel it's going to change. It has to change. I hope to God that I can see it before I leave this planet, because otherwise I'll be a very disappointed man, believe me, because I started this tour in the hope that I could at least use a bit of my influence to get people to see and understand what was happening. You see, it's...
David Cameron said he would push the nuclear doomsday button.
It just shows you how much they know about life and death. They have no concept, because once we get into another war, that's what will happen. Everyone has them, remember. So there will be no civilization left. We'll be extinguished completely, and that will be the end of all our problems.
But they were cheering that, the Sun and all the British people, they love it. They was cheering David Cameron when he said he would push the button.
I think it's absolutely irresponsible. It really is.
They mocked Jeremy Corbyn for saying he wouldn't.
Well, I was with Jeremy Corbyn when he said that he would eliminate those missiles we have in Scotland, you know. I think all missiles should have been abolished years ago. They're too dangerous now. They're spread around throughout the world, every little country has some weapons of mass destruction, and it could happen just by accident. Some idiot could pull a trigger, and the whole world is gone. It's a frightening scenario, believe me. I mean, we should remember the big bomb that was dropped on Japan after 45, and the disaster and the deaths that caused, and that was just 2 bombs.
But they use differences. They use war. They use you know, the enemy. You know, like communism. There's always something, isn't there? There's all they use that as a tool to power.
Yeah, and I'm fearsome because they know that there's a build-up of youth in all these countries who are lacking proper work, dim futures, and if they wanted them to put on a uniform, they'd gladly put it on, forgetting that it might be the end of them and many other people. But I feel governments should have more responsibility and seek peaceful means to solve things, and not going to war and fighting. I mean, look what's happening in Iraq today. I mean, I don't know when that will be settled, if ever. Maybe it could end up with a conflict with Russia, you know.
Jeremy, it's really interesting because Jeremy Corbyn, no matter about working in his constituency, he spent his whole life fighting for peace.
Yeah.
And this is the one thing that the right-wing media and the Tories are trying to attack him on. It seems incredible because they're the warmongers.
Yeah, well, I mean, the only way that people will attain a decent living, a comfortable living, to be able to say, this is a good life, this is what I've been waiting for all my life, is that there are no wars. We have a good Labour leader who will lead us to this path, which
but not all. You said yourself, Tony Blair. You know, not all Labour leaders are.
Oh no, Tony Blair was good in the beginning, but somehow or other he become now. I think he works for the arms companies. You know.
We have desperate refugees fleeing, and again they use politics. Again they use politics of division. You know, they use immigration and change the words with refugees, people fleeing from wars, so that we can. They use them as a political tool, saying, "Look, they're coming here, taking your job, taking your housing."
Oh, it's nonsense, you know, because after the Second World War, England had to find accommodation for 300,000 Poles who had been fighting in that war and couldn't go back to Poland because Russia held it at that time. And we found places for them, and we taught them English, and they became part of society. And this can happen with all nations. If the country will accept them, they will be just hard-working citizens, just like you or me, you know.
I love how you say England and not the UK, because I always say she's the Queen of England.
Excuse me. Yes, I think it's been good having royalty. I can't say in the very early days the First World War was fought because of disputes by royalty. Thousands and thousands of soldiers were killed, British soldiers in the trenches. Where I lived in the doss houses in Barnsley, Halifax, and people living in those houses also were ex-soldiers of that time who had lost an arm or a leg. After the war is over, the government doesn't want anything to do with the soldiers who fought. They're on their own.